Hi, folks. We're on the second part of Take My Yoke. We started it yesterday, and we're going to start, do this now on stage two or part two. I want you to pay real close attention. It's extremely fascinating. And what we're going to do today is that we need to remember that stage one of becoming a rabbi, which is every Hebrew boy's goal, was to become a rabbi. That's all they wanted. They didn't want to go fishing to make a living. They didn't want to do carpentry work to make a living. They didn't want to have a shop owner. They didn't want to be a shop owner. They wanted to become a rabbi. That was their deepest goal and deepest desire as they grew up. That's what they wanted. But becoming a rabbi in stage one, it required them to memorize the whole book of Leviticus. And then at the end of that stage, from zero, from birth to six, at the end of that, which was age six, they had to memorize and tell that to those that had the authority to move them to the next stage. And some of them would not. They'd think, "Oh, I'd rather go play baseball. I'd rather go do this or that," and they would quit. They weren't allowed to go into the next phase. But those that did finish that, they were allowed to go into it. And stage two is where we're at today. Stage two goes like this. Here they had to memorize the Torah. The Torah consists of the books of Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. And their goal was to memorize that, and then they had to, at the end of that, stage two went from age 6 to age 12. Age 6 to age 12. And if they had studied and memorized all of those books, then they had to think, I'm going to have the test, and before the people that could move me on to the next stage, that I'm going to have to memorize and quote every one of those. But that wasn't the case. It wasn't about quoting and memorizing all 5 of those books. That was the graduation part of stage two. Stage two consisted of being able to ask questions and have answers that would cause an intelligent conversation with someone, to cause them to want to continue on and find out more about their message. And so it was a lot tougher thing to stage two. But they were those that really wanted to do that, they would stay right with it. Well, what would happen is that once they was ready to do that, then they would go. They was at the end of their year. They had to go to the second, or to the test part of it. And this test part was, like I said earlier, was not what they memorized, but it was the questions and answers. And in Luke chapter 21 and verses number 52, we find Jesus in the temple, sitting in the midst of the doctors and the lawyers, hearing them and asking them questions. He was listening to them, and then he would ask questions. And as they heard him asking the questions and the answers that he gave, it says that they were astonished at his wisdom and his understanding of that. And in verse number 49, Jesus, if you'll remember, Joseph and Mary had to go and pay their taxes, and they turned around and Jesus wasn't there. And they had to go back a day's time and find him. They found him in the temple with the doctors and the lawyers, and the doctors and the lawyers were astounded. They loved to have him there. He was 12 years of age. But his parents said, "We've been looking everywhere for you. Why have you done this to us?" And Jesus' response was this: "Don't you know that I had to be about my Father's business?" And that was what was said. And they went on and they were scratching their head. Who is this kid? Who is this 12-year-old boy that all he wants to do is study the old covenant? And so that was what part two, that's how it finished. Now, once you passed that test and they certified you, if that was the correct term, you were now available to enter stage 3, which was becoming a rabbi. But that one was a real tricky one. You had to stay in it for 18 years. 18 years. It was a tough area. We're going to touch on that, stage 3. The next, hang on, this is going to be exciting. Once we get down to the nitty-gritty after Jesus becomes a rabbi, it's fascinating what we're going to find out. God bless you.